So on this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we've got another great guest from The Ark, which is on SYFY right now, which is an awesome series. It's Reece Ritchie. Reece, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, you know what? I'm so excited because literally for the past decade or so, you've starred in so many awesome things, from Prince of Persia, Hercules, Desert Dancer, 10,000 BC, many, many more. So to have you on the show, it's a complete honour. And we're going to chat about your awesome new show, which I've seen episode 1 already. Because unfortunately, here in the UK, we don't get any press passers or any sort of screeners because they see us as a third-rate community. I don't know. But you know what? I've managed to see episode 1, so it is awesome. So we're going to have a talk about that. But before we do, you know, the last 2 years have been quite challenging, to say the least, and I can't wait till we get away from this. But over the last 2 years, obviously, we've had the pandemic. We've had everything going on, which has affected many jobs, many lives. So how have you kept positive and moving forward, Reece?
I mean, I have to kind of echo Richard Fleischman's sentiment from the show on this, is that I also am racked with a sense of guilt because I managed somehow to work throughout the entire pandemic. So I have to back up a bit. I was working with actually Dean Devlin and Jonathan Glassner on their other show, the Outpost.
Yep.
And I remember speaking to my agent at the time, and he basically said that none of his actors were working. I was the only actor working. And, you know, he's a reputable London agent, and the whole industry just shut down. It was the weirdest time. But for some reason, of course, we had a lot of testing and protocols and all that stuff. But fortunately, we got to keep filming. So we got sent home a couple of times when we figured, you know, while they were figuring things out. But by and large, yeah, we were shooting seasons 3 and 4, I think, of The Outpost throughout. So
very lucky then, because I've got a lot of friends that are in the theatre, and for them, the theatre really took it hard, because obviously, you know, it's bad enough that people aren't really going to the theatre as much as they should do, because that is where it all started. You know, and now obviously with the pandemic and the theatre going back to how it was, it's just glorious to see. It really, really is. So when we're talking about acting, what inspired you to get into probably one of the most competitive industries known to man? Because it's not a simple 9 to 5 job. It's not working at your local Tesco's, you know. So what got you into acting? Excellent.
I actually began at Tesco's at the age of 16, part-time, they call it ambient, which is basically a posh word for shelf stacking.
Really?
And I loved it. Yeah. And then I went to Halfords and started building bikes. So that was part-time while I was at school. But to answer your question, I just remember being in the drama studio, and it just felt entirely different to every other subject. I mean, I enjoyed school, but it felt like there was a binary process with every other subject. You could, if you spent enough time reading the English books, or if you studied science long enough, you would eventually get to the answer and be correct, for want of a better word. In drama, there was no right answer. You could do a scene, and then there would be 100 or a million other ways to play that scene, and so it's kind of this bottomless pit of curiosity, discovery, and it's 3-dimensional. You know, you're stood up, just the way you hold your weight, the way you walk, the way you talk, everything. It's like playing an instrument. Everything counts for the audience. So it just electrified a part of my brain that I think other subjects didn't. And then I had this fantastic drama teacher called Mrs. Carnwell. And I think had it not been for her, I might not be, an actor today. I think she saw my frustration, because maybe 50% of the children probably saw it as an opportunity to mess around in drama. And when I got into drama studio, I was like, okay, we've done the other bits, let's work, you know. And I think she identified that quite early on. So she pulled me to one side and said, look, you know, do you want to do a play outside of school time? And I barely let her finish the sentence. I was like, absolutely. So we did Bouncers by John Godber. I don't want to get this wrong. We did The Dumbwaiter by Harold Pinter. We did Dreaming of Road by Jim Cartwright. I think it's Jim Cartwright. And you know, just this passion for acting. Just every play I did, I just needed to do more and more and more. And then to feel the reaction from the audience, I just got the bug. And then when I got to 15, I remember when the bell used to go at high school for lunch. If you ran fast enough, you'd get the cheeseburgers, and if you were slow, you'd get the hamburgers, and everybody wanted the cheeseburgers. So the bell went, and at the beginning of that class, Mrs. Carmel had said, "I've got one leaflet for the National Youth Theatre, but I only have one." And looking back, I'm pretty sure it was. She didn't look at me once when she said it, and I think it was pointed at me. And she said, "So if you're interested, come and see me in my office after the class." And sure enough, the bell went, and I started to run down the hallway, as was my muscle memory. I just remember it like a completely sliding doors moment. I just remember it like it was yesterday. I remember who was on my left, who was on my right, running down the hallway. And something just held me back and said, "Go back and get that, get your cheeseburger tomorrow." And I did, and I knocked on her door, and it was like that film at the end of that scene at the end of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when he goes in and sees, Gene Wilder. And she turned from her desk and gave me this leaflet, and I applied and miraculously got in. I think they were letting in 180 people out of 4,000 that year.
Wow.
For a 3-week course in London. And bless him, the late Ed Wilson, who was the artistic director at the time, I did my audition in Holloway Road in London, and he turned to me and said, "How old did you say you were, Reece?" I said, "I'm 15," knowing that the entry age was 16. I said, "However, I will, if I were to become a member of the National Youth Theatre, I will turn 16 during my course." And he said, "That's good enough then." And I think a matter of weeks later, I got a letter through the post, and that it was denying a cheeseburger that gave me an acting career.
There you go. So you're never going to look at a cheeseburger the same again. And the rest is history. I mean, when you decided to start your career in this industry, did you have a plan in place of what you wanted to achieve? And is there an end goal of what you want to achieve?
That's a good question. I think motive is so important. Whenever I, in the past, I've gone back to my school or I've spoken to drama students, this is the thing that always gets left out. But for me, it's the most important, is the reason why you're doing it. Because 90% of the reasons why are going to leave you desolate and disappointed, I think. If it's fame, if it's money, if it's recognition, because there are no consistencies in this business. So my reason why, I think I was quite conscientious and methodical and careful as you can be, saying that you want to become an actor. I thought I'll give it till I'm like 21, 22 and see if I've gotten anywhere. And then if I haven't, I'll reevaluate. So I kind of wrote myself a 5-year check or a 6-year check and said, go for it. And if not, you're still young and you can figure it out. So that's what I did. So I didn't really have a clear plan. And I certainly didn't plan to leave drama school in my second year and end up just as a caveman on a mountain in New Zealand with Roland Emmerich. That definitely wasn't part of the plan. And then when I got we had the premiere at the Chinese Theatre in LA, and I sat there, watched the film. And at the end, my name and Joel Fry, I don't know if you know Joel Fry, but fantastic actor. He's just in the Dalmatians movie, 101 Dalmatians movie with Emma Stone. He was in Plebs. He's done a bunch of stuff, Game of Thrones. He was sat beside me and our names came up at the end. And I was suddenly struck by this reality of my only mission was to be in one film. And I've done it. I wasn't interested in fame. I didn't necessarily want to, make a ton of money from it. I just wanted to be in a movie. I thought that was such an insurmountable wish that there wasn't any point in thinking beyond that. And I just remember being on the plane on the way home, just thinking, what now? And so, I sort of started again mentally, if that makes sense. After that point, I kind of thought, okay, now you've got to develop your craft. You've got to see if you could work again. And yeah, that
And
I
and
guess
you
that's the start of it.
certainly did, because obviously you went on to star in some awesome projects, especially with Dwayne Johnson, and on Prince of Persia as well, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, because I can remember playing the game when I was younger. So
Same.
when they brought out the movie, I just thought this was just so well done, and the cast, Sir John Hurt, and
Yeah.
actors like that, it must have been amazing to work side by side. But this industry is quite up and down. I mean, I went into acting when I was younger. I went to university. I did a degree in performing arts, and then I've done a few TV, shows and a few movies. But I've got to say, it is very. I mean, I've come out of it because I didn't have a thick enough skin. So how do you keep motivated? Because it is up and down. You get in your auditions, you'll get the ones that you want, and you may not get the ones that you want as well. I mean, how do you keep motivated, along those lines?
Yeah, I think it's fear of the other. I'm just not very good at doing anything else. To be completely honest, I mean, I'd love to have a better answer for you, but I've tried it, and I really struggle with. I think the lack of predictability, the spontaneity, the ability to, if you do work, to travel and do all those other things, is so alluring. And the danger of it just keeps me going, I think. And the motivation changes over the years. When you're young, it's maybe linked a lot more to your ego of like, I want to be in this, I want to do that. And then as you get older, it becomes more about family and wanting to spend more time at home and not be away so much. And so, but certainly now my family is, I have a son, and that's all the motivation I need. So yeah, but there've been one or two tricky years, and you just have to dig in. But it's not easy. There have been some very tough moments where you think, is this the last one? Yeah, it's
I
hard
mean,
to
would
say.
you say your approach to your job as an actor has changed since having a family? Because the security side of things, and you're saying that I am sure that you're going to be good at other things than acting. You know what I mean? But I mean, has your approach to it changed because of having a family now?
Yes, I think it has. Although I kind of, I know you can't plan everything, but I sort of subconsciously, I think, waited until I was older. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s now, and my son is almost 2. So I waited quite a while. I didn't, I think if that would have happened during my 20s, it would have been a very different kind of reality, and it might have. I don't want to use the word restricted, but it would have certainly have changed what I was able to go and do and when. So I felt like I was ready. And also, I think, when you're a jobbing actor, when you're younger, you're kind of living, you're not getting, generally speaking, you're not getting huge, big budget movies. I mean, I was very fortunate, but still, you still have to kind of navigate financially as a young person, as we all do. Whereas when you're a bit older and you've done a bit more and you might have invested a bit or saved a bit, things sometimes, touch wood, hopefully get a little bit easier. So yeah, but it's just now the first time when my agent calls me about a job, the first question I ask is where is it and for how long? Because everything has to be seen through the prism of being a father.
and that is a great arc to my next question, because how do you choose your roles, and what potentially does that role have to have for you to actually go, you know what, yeah, I want it?
There's a kind of an alchemy that happens when you read a script. Sometimes you'll get an audition through and you'll read the script and you just think, oh, I just can't hear this person's voice in my head. And then other times you'll read it and you can almost smell the room that the scene was written for or written in. So it's a very hard thing to articulate, but you just click with certain roles, and some roles scare you. I mean, Desert Dancer was a very scary role, so I had to do it. It was a true story, and I had to do it. So it's have I done this before? Who's shooting it? Who else is casting it? There are so many different factors that play into that. So yeah, it just depends on the job, really.
Mm.
You know,
I mean, what's been the wildest sort of proposal you've had for a job, and that you've turned around and gone, hell no, that is so not me?
this is a good question. I don't. It's funny because if you've got the right agent, hopefully a lot of those scripts don't. My agent knows me. I mean, my agent found me at the National Youth Theatre when I was 17.
Okay.
So, what's that? It's too long to mention. I think it's about 17 years or something like that. We've been working together. Yeah. Anyway, my maths is. See, I'm not very good at maths. But so it's. I think a lot of the things probably that he knows that I wouldn't like or I'm not right for, they won't probably get to me. There have been one or two over the years, and you are defined a lot of the time by what you say no to. But I try not to say no to too much. I think sometimes you can be really wrong about a project. You just have to trust your gut and not be too cerebral about it.
Well, thank goodness you didn't say no to The Ark, because The Ark is an awesome show, and we've already had episode 1 that is getting us all asking questions. It really is. So for those under all those rocks that haven't seen it yet, if you could give us like a quick rundown of what the show is about and whom you play.
Okay, so it's set approximately 100 years in the future. We're on a spaceship on our way to Proxima B. Earth is, we don't really know the state of Earth, but we can assume it's probably not too good. We've been asleep, cryogenically asleep, for 3 years, I think, 2 or 3 years, and we're woken up suddenly before schedule by something that has hit the ship or has affected the ship, and all of the commanding officers have been killed. And the highest ranking officers are 3 lowly lieutenants, played by myself. I play Lieutenant Spencer Lane. Richard Fleischman, who you've spoken to, plays Lieutenant James Bryce, and Garnet, played by Christy Burke. And you have this kind of, from the very first frame of the first episode, it's go, go, go. Things are going wrong. We're running out of oxygen. Everything's going, to hell in a handbasket. And within that, you have this kind of microcosm of disagreement between the 3 of us, of like which one of us is in charge, who's the boss. So yeah, it's such a great cast. This, I mean, we've got such a group of talented actors. It just made my job so much easier.
I mean, I've got to say, in episode 1, the friction is unbelievable. It really is. And I've got to say, this show has got like an era of like a retro Star Trek, and even the title music I think's awesome for the show. And we mentioned earlier around choosing certain roles. So what attracted you to this show when it got presented to you? Because I think it may have something to do with Dean and the role of Lieutenant Spencer Lane. So what attracted you to him?
So I had a bit of a different experience to everybody else, because I'd spent the best part of 2 or 3 years working with Dean and Jonathan, either directly or indirectly. I mean, Jonathan Glassner directed the first episode I was in of the Outpost. So I knew of them, but I got sent the audition like anybody else did. And of course, the email comes through and you look at the names, you're like, okay. A lot of people would have thought I would have felt less pressure because I knew them. But actually, I felt more, because they had seen me on set for, the last 2 or 3 years, and they were asking me to create and show them something different. And I looked more or less the same as I had in the Outpost. I had long hair. So I really got to work on it, and it became clear that Lieutenant Spencer Lane is of the mind that it's survival of the fittest, and he's quite pragmatic and a little bit cutting at times, a little bit harsh, quite myopic in some ways. But what I liked about him was that you can kind of see where he's coming from. If you're in a situation like that, heaven forbid, where it's life or death, I think that there is some utility at least, in being quite emotionless and quite direct about what the solution is, because one could argue that you'll get stuff done, and also you'll be prepared to make the difficult decisions that no one else will be able to in a difficult situation. So there was a glint in him of I kind of see where this guy's coming from, but I can also understand why people might dislike him.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a hunch that they didn't want him to be fully disliked. So it's a challenge that you've got to walk this tightrope of, you've got to push this guy to the edge and then perhaps bring him back. But we'll see whether or not that's the case throughout the season.
I have got to say, I am Team Lane, because you're right.
Yes.
I mean, in an emergency, you want to be with the calm person, and if he's a bit obnoxious, but he gets stuff done, that is the key. And obviously Christie's character and Richard's, they are hiding a lot of things. It's obviously apparent that they're not all what they're about, so we've got that to look forward to.
And Lane is a bit of a truffle sniffer. He's kind of got a nose for truth, I think. And some of the things that he starts to pick up on quite early on may or may not come to fruition as being true. So that's another interesting thing about him, is that it would be easy to write him off as, a cantankerous, kind of difficult, black and white kind of character. But that's what interested me about him, is that he has actually got a little bit of a nose for when something's not quite right. And we'll see whether or not he's correct.
I mean, for those who are wondering who Dean Devlin and Jonathan Glasner is, obviously Dean is behind the Independence Day movies, Godzilla, loads of movies, and obviously Jonathan Glasner from SG-1 Stargate. And I've got to say, there is a scene.
Those two small projects that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah. But I've got to say, in episode 1, I did get the feels of Independence Day with Garnett's speech. Literally, I felt like there was a Bill Pullman moment just there, which I thought was fantastic. And I heard in a previous interview that you did that Dean and Jonathan gave you all backstories that you had to hide from each other. Is this normal in projects? And did you have to, after a few Ribenas, spill the beans with all your castmates?
Well, on the topic of Ribena,
there we go.
It's actually a Vimto, but it's a funny one, isn't it? Because we're all living together. Well, we're living within close proximity of each other for 4.5 months. We're socializing together. We're eating together, and it was really funny to see how everybody kind of dealt with having these secrets, as it were. But also, having the secret is one thing. We weren't given the whole season from day one. We don't know what's going to happen. So you're given maybe 1 or 2 episodes at a time, just so that you have enough time to learn it. And sometimes some of the road was being laid as you walked on it as well. So it was interesting, everyone having a secret, but we still didn't know how they were going to be revealed, expressed, how much they might affect our characters or other characters around us. So we knew stuff, but there was a lot we didn't know, which gave us all kind of a universal feeling of angst during the whole shoot,
I mean, was there a period in time throughout that process where you got to a point and you all stood at each other and pointed and went, I knew it. You know what I mean? Because obviously you're hiding everything from each other.
I think that the trick is just to pick up the bill whenever we went for dinner, and then on the way home try and kind of prize morsels of information out of one another. I just tried to ply Richard with tequila and tried to get his secret out as early as possible.
Did he crack?
That was my technique. No comment.
Oh, what?
No, he did. He's a consummate professional.
So this is your first time in space, apparently. How was it?
Yes, it is. It's weird because I feel like listening to other actors, I feel like a lot of the things that I did early on in my career, it was almost like kind of topsy-turvy the way it was done, because I was thrust in front of green screens from quite early on. So all I really knew, I mean, don't get me wrong, we were on locations for 10,000 BC and stuff, but there were still massive woolly mammoths that were cut out of green screen walking beside me, and I had Roland saying, okay, this is what's happening, the mammoth stumbles over, you move out of the way. So the green screen part I was used to, looking out of the window of the bridge and seeing just green. But what was fantastic about this and quite unusual was that we had it's going to sound very it's not going to sound very glamorous at all to your to your listeners, but we had a roof on the set. Usually you don't have a roof. So you're always aware of the studio and the lights above you. But the way they lit this show and the way they designed the stages, you could walk through so many meters of corridor and not see anyone or see any cameras or anything like that. Between scenes, you could take a walk around the ship. And it was very easy. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I had someone trying to... Are we still there? Yeah. It was very easy to forget that it was make-believe because, you could walk from the bridge to the med bay, to the canteen. It was just fantastic. It was really immersive, the lengths to which they went in order to build this set.
And obviously we're talking about the suits next because, I know that it can be quite difficult at times to act and to say your lines normally, when you're in suits. But these suits, these helmets are awesome. What was that like and how difficult was it?
Yeah, it was quite funny because we were like, oh, these are super cool. And then you put them on and it's just, you just can't hear anything. And then one day I was stood there and I felt something hot on the top of my head. I thought, yeah, you're just imagining that. It must just be getting warm in this helmet. But I was like, there's a really concentrated bit of heat on the top of my head. And then it started to kind of burn a bit. And I thought, God, what on earth? And then I thought about it. I was like, that's the mic pack. They've put the mic pack, the radio mic, in the top, and it sat on my head. And just because there's no ventilation in there, it just got hotter and hotter and hotter. And Matsuki, who's a fantastic sound technician who I'd worked with on the Outpost, I just called him over and just sort of quietly said, Matsuki, where's the mic pack? Because usually you have it on your back, or on your hip, on your ankle. And he looked at me and is it hot? And I was like, yeah. so it was red hot. So we took that out. So there were so many hurdles we had to negotiate with these suits. But the actual physical suits themselves, like some of the cast were, oh, this is really uncomfortable. It's hard to go to the bathroom. I've spent a lot of my career wearing togas with swords and shields and armor and everything you can think of, So this for me was like a onesie. I was like, I can just zip it and you're done. As we say in the industry, 10-1, you're off to the bathroom.
And they could have been worse. Do you know what I mean? They look awesome though. I think the design and the suits, I just think are just fantastic. They really, really are. So from the teaser trailer after episode 1 that we got, it certainly gets us ready for the rest of the season and what to look forward to. But in your own words, what can the viewers expect to experience from the rest of the season without spoiling anything?
Yeah, I think the core strength of this show and what Jonathan Glasser and Dean Devlin do so brilliantly is they are so character centric, that they're so focused on developing the nuances that we all have and representing them on the screen and just kind of bringing up the contrast on those traits. So I think you'll come on board for the ship and the spectacle, and my hope is that audiences will stay for the characters. I've had the pleasure of seeing the first 6 episodes now. When Richard and I were in LA promoting it, they were kind enough at Electric to screen a couple of episodes for us. And it's just, you just find yourself, even knowing kind of what happens, you find yourself getting drawn into the characters. Got such a vibrant, eclectic, skilled cast that I think if that wasn't the case, I think that eventually, as Dean has said, the premise wears off. You get used to the premise and the situation. People talk about character and they care about character, and they've made sure that is what this show is hinged on.
It's definitely character focus. Episode 1, everything was going on, and we got treated to a lot of the characters and a bit about what they're about. Fingers crossed, I've got Stacey Reid coming on onto the show as well.
Stacey's amazing, yeah,
because her character is just awesome. It really, really is. But let's talk Christy Burke. Okay, so she was kind. Yeah, she was kind enough.
They broke the mold.
She was kind enough to give me a bit of insight around her obsession with ice cream, but shots were fired. Reece, shots were fired.
Oh, I'm sure. So, we are talking about Christy Burke.
Yes, and she told me, and I know that the media can exaggerate things and make things up, so I want to get it from the horse's mouth. She told me about an incident where you may or may not have farted in her face.
I have no recollection of that whatsoever.
Do you know,
I think being on the ship, it was weird. I read some articles on this actually. When you spend a lot of time in the same set, it can lead to amnesia, hallucinations. It's a claim that she made. It's an outlandish claim, very wild one. But I'm sure she was probably just having quite a long day, was quite bored on set, and figured it would be a funny story.
And it could be a result of an overdose of ice cream. Do you know what I mean? All that sugar.
Well, this is it. I mean, I would see her from my hotel window. I see her coming back with just piles of this ice cream, and it does. It can lead to hallucinations. Yeah.
Really. So we need to get some help for Christy with the Ice Cream Anonymous. I don't know if there's an organisation out there that can reach out to her on social media.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been some feedback on the microphones. There are probably 150 people on set, so any one of those could have slipped or something on the rubber on their shoes could have made a weird sound. We'll never know.
Well, you know what? We have got that sorted out. We've got your side of things, so it's down to the viewers and who they believe. Christy,
I think she was. Was she referring to a? Did she describe? Because now that you mention it, something does ring a bell. I think she was crawling under a desk on set in the bridge, and I was sat next to her on a leather chair. Now, for me, the focal point of that story is why would you crawl under a desk? Very suspicious. So I think we need to launch an inquest there. But if I did move on the leather, maybe that produced a sound that she mistook for.
I mean, then again, you've got lovely pictures like these. So I think, Reece, you may have been overdosing on the ice cream as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have a penchant for ice cream. I will admit that. But I was eating different flavors to Christy, so we'll have to do a full-blown investigation on this one.
Yes, but no. I mean, and the next question: who do you think killed Jasper?
I mean, how to lose your job in one swift answer?
Exactly.
Right?
No, I'm only joking.
You know, I can't answer that.
Do you know what? On social media, of course, you got.
I think Christy Burke's fart killed Jasper.
Oh dear, silent but deadly. But no, just a few more questions left. So you've worked in so many great projects with so many great names. Who has been the favourite that you've gotten the most out of as an actor acting opposite?
You just the best thing about this business is the people, and you just learn from everybody. If you that's the idea, is you just soak up things from everyone. There are a couple of things that spring to mind. I mean, when I was doing the Lovely Bones, I was stood in a mall. They had dressed a mall for the 1970s, and I was stood in a mall, and I was really excited about that scene because everyone in the cast was in it. We had Mark Wahlberg, Susan Sarandon, Rachel Weisz, and Stanley Tucci, and Peter Jackson at the monitor, and Saoirse Ronan, who had just been nominated for the Oscar for Atonement. And it was just the most surreal thing, and I just remember looking around, just thinking I can learn from literally everybody on this set. And I think you have to have that open mind when you're working. There was a time when I'm going to name drop here shamelessly, but I was at dinner with Ben Kingsley, and I was auditioning for something, and there was a line in this scene that was just felt like a really terrible line. And hopefully you won't mind me telling this story. I'm sure he's a regular listener of your podcast.
Maybe,
but I asked him. I was basically I was a young actor, and I was entertaining the prospect of maybe speaking to somebody about tweaking this line, slightly changing the line. And he said, "Can I look at it?" And I showed it to him, and he said, "Yeah, it is a terrible line." And I was like, oh, "Okay, he's gonna fix this for me." And he said, "But maybe it's not the line that has to change." And I was like, you've just acknowledged that it's like a tricky one to get your head around, and it doesn't necessarily make perfect sense. In that moment, he taught me so much, because not everything is always going to be as you want it to be on the page. In fact, very rarely is everything going to fit together. I mean, they have so many different drafts of so many different episodes in any show that you do. there's a name for it, draft drift. Things get missed, things get raised in earlier episodes that don't get resolved. So if you're doing your homework, you're always going to come up against these things as an actor, and they're going to bother you. But you just have to have this kind of. He taught me to have an attitude of, it doesn't matter if the words aren't perfect. There's a million different ways to say a line. There's 100 different ways to put a nuance on something, or a look, or a something. So, I learned from him. I mean, spending so much time with John Hurt and Ian McShane on Hercules, just sitting in the tent with them for 6 months, it was far too much to mention. They just taught me so much. They were so generous and kind with their time. And then you might learn something from someone who's just stepped foot on set about their freedom, their carefree, maybe some of their naivety gives rise to some brilliance that you had maybe lost a little bit of. So I try and learn from everyone, and I have to add, maintaining friendships, which doesn't happen all the time after a job, is the greatest gift. I mean, Axel Henny and I from Hercules are still very good friends. Richard and I, forever bonded. Maybe much to his disappointment, but he's stuck with me. And Christy and I spent a lot of time together. It's just a gift to be able to walk away from jobs and retain. So it's a very long-winded way of saying that these people also end up teaching you a lot more in life as well. You gain a lot from sort of being around their brilliance and getting to observe how they conduct themselves and stuff.
So basically, Ben Kingsley is your Yoda, and he is the teacher of all. But yeah, it must be so fascinating, because all actors aren't the same, and you've worked with so many great names, and you will be for many years. Being great yourself and starring in many more things. I mean, you've got that series coming on ITV. Which I can finally discuss.
Platform 7. I remember being up in the office saying, "Can we talk about this yet?" They're like, "Nope, it's not been announced." But that's something, again. I can't even tell you what the character is, I guess. But anyway, it's a very different character for me, and I had to do a lot of research into a specific condition, or I have to be very vague here, but anyway, it was a real journey for me to sort of learn about that area of things, play that character. So I'm excited for people to see it.
Excellent. I mean, with all these shows that you've been on and movies, have you liberated any props or costume pieces or mementos from the sets?
I'll be back.
Oh, go on then, Arnold.
So, okay. Is that the first time one of your guests has left the interview?
No, Christy. She went to get a badge.
Oh, she did?
From the Ark, yeah.
She probably went away to fart, I reckon. That's probably the truth.
Yeah. I did hear a little. Yeah.
So this isn't a prop, but this was we all got a wooden model made of our characters in Hercules. Like, it's all one piece of wood, which is pretty awesome. Cool. That's me with a cape. But this is the blade that I used in Hercules, and it still has the flecks of dried prop blood on it. So that's super cool. I wore that. It's really heavy, solid. But they kept offering me the plastic ones or the rubber ones, and I was like, no, I want the real one. And then I have some great gifts as well. I have a gold-leafed full works of Shakespeare signed by Peter Jackson and all of the team there, and I do have a bunch of stuff actually that a lot of it I've just put in a box and it's in a corner of a loft somewhere.
Oh wow!
I don't like to try and put it all on the walls. Come into my lovely room of ego.
You see, I collect film and TV props and costume pieces. The sponsors of my show is Prop Store, and they've got offices in LA and in London, and they would go crazy at the thought of you having boxes of stuff. They'd be like, "What?" So if you ever want a part in the future, You know who to come to, because I think that we need to keep these as mementos. But for yourself, it's a reminder of your journey and something that you can hand down to your little one eventually.
Precisely. I mean, you get paid, obviously. You know, they look after us when we're working, but the money comes and goes. It is the memories that you keep, and just having the odd prop. Like I think I have the rings and my necklace from Prince of Persia just over there somewhere. I've got a couple of bits on top of my piano. And then the rest of it I've got so much. I've got so many bits and bobs. And you know, if you build a relationship with the props masters, a lot of the time they have like duplicates. So they just say, you know, look, take that, don't tell anybody, and then I come on podcasts and tell the whole world that.
Exactly.
Pillaging film sets everywhere.
but you're the caretaker. You haven't stolen it. It's better to ask for forgiveness and permission, as I always say. But one of my last questions that I always ask all my guests is, if your life was a movie, Reece, what title would it have?
Yeah, I'm such an idiot because I saw you ask Richard this question, and I thought to myself at the time, I should come up with an answer for that, and I didn't. I went and made myself a Vimto. If my life was a movie, wow. Invictus is taken, isn't it? Matt Damon already stole that one. I'm going to say never give up. Yeah, never give up.
Never give up on Disney Plus.
Yeah, because on Disney Plus. Yeah, because there have been some moments, as I'm sure we've all encountered, where you think, this is it, you know, and you get knocked down, or something gets cancelled, or you're in a show that, you know, I was in a show that ended up getting cancelled, and it was a straight to series thing, and you know, politics at the studio, and suddenly it was gone. And those things can hit you pretty hard, especially if you're young and you're, you know, everything you've ever dreamed of is about to happen, and then it gets dashed away. And I think, and then personally, there are things that happen, and you just never give in, as the late Churchill said.
Exactly, and Rocky Balboa said it correct. It's not how hard you can.
It's not how hard you get hit. It's not how hard you can get it. Get it up. Yeah, I got them all.
that is literally my life as well. But do we hear any stirrings of season 2 yet? I mean, is it too early to talk about season 2 arc?
I think because only the first episode has been released, it's I think they're going to wait and see, you know, how the next few episodes do, and then hopefully we'll hear something. I mean, I really hope we go back. I'd love to play Lane again, but we just had such a ball in Serbia. We had so much fun, and I'd already been there for like 2 or 3 years, and I realised I hadn't really explored it to its fullest. You know, I'd been to most places, but Richard was like, "Come on, we're going out. We're getting bikes." So we bought bikes, and we were going out the river and the lake, and we water skied. It was just the best summer. So I hope we go back for more of that. And also now we know the show, we know the characters, so there's going to be a lot of that kind of teething period that doesn't have to happen again. We get
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, because too many shows are being cancelled way too early, and I've just read that Yellowstone is being finished after the rest of this season, really? Because Kevin Costner is doing something else, and I've just literally got into that series and I've binged all 5 seasons of Yellowstone, and I now want to be a cowboy.
So the show that I was referring to earlier that ended up getting cancelled, a wonderful actress called Kelsey Chow was in that with me, and she's in Yellowstone, and it's very high up on my list of things to watch. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I know there's like there's an 1883 and a 1923 or something like that.
Yeah.
1923. Do you watch them chronologically? Are you supposed to watch Yellowstone first? Because I know they happen.
So literally, because I've never watched Yellowstone, I actually watched 1883 first. And then I started to watch 1923, and then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to start watching, because again, I've got kids myself, small girls, and trying to get the time to watch things. So with your little one being 2, take advantage of it now. But yeah, I mean, I watched it 1883, 1923, but it doesn't really matter, to be fair.
No,
but I've got to say, 83 is astonishing. I mean, the
Okay.
story in that, and I didn't realise the writer, Taylor Sheridan, because I always thought that Yellowstone had a feel of Sons of Anarchy, but with cowboys. And then I realised that the guy that wrote Yellowstone was the cop in Sons of Anarchy, and it was just really odd, but amazing show. Just so well done.
Okay.
And 1923.
Yeah, they're all on my list because everybody
Yeah.
keeps. The thing is, recently, is you just get so overwhelmed with recommendations that you end up not watching any of it because you just think, where do I start? You know, Happy Valley at the moment is a huge. I haven't watched any of it. We started it last night. But everybody's raving about that. So every time I go to watch one thing, someone says, you got to watch this other thing. So I just need to start somewhere, basically, and not be so overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work.
I mean, years ago, I can remember being a kid. I mean, I'm 43, so I can remember as having 3 TV channels, well, 4, and then all of a sudden Channel 5 came and everything went crazy. And now it's like literally there's so much content out there. It's sort of it's a competition to get, you know, your show out there and actually seen. And I think there's quite a few gems that are forgotten that don't get seen. So I try and do my best to try and highlight those. But The Ark is streaming every single Wednesday. No, showing every single Wednesday at 10 o'clock on Sci-Fi, and then streaming the next day on Peacock, which I think's awesome. I cannot wait for episode 2. But Reece, you've been a great guest. It's been an absolute honour, and I wish you all the best with the little one, with the family, and the career. And I look forward to possibly speaking to you again in the future for future projects.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. You're a great guy, and good luck with the podcast. And, hopefully we'll talk again in the future.